When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Goms YouTube channel. Today's video, we'll be continuing our Song of Ice and Fire reread. We are on Tyrion IV. We're picking up directly after Catelyn has taken Tyrion prisoner, and we're picking up where that plot line has gone. So, that'll move us into actually starting this chapter. It is a fantastic one, and it takes place again on the East Road to the Vale and the Eyrie. And we're going to see some of the struggles of taking that route and that choice by Catelyn. And page 324 kind of has like almost a cold open. It's literally Tyrion's horse being butchered for food. Because again, Tyrion's horse is failing to make this trip. They've been riding really hard, not taking many breaks. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later on in this chapter, but the reason that they're doing this is because Catelyn is worried that the Lannisters will find them, or people will find them and bring Tyrion back, then would take probably her captive. So there's a lot of urgency to this mission. And in a lot of ways, I think it's Catelyn being overly cautious, as Tyrion will talk about later on, and we'll get into a little bit later. Again, no one really thinks that they're on this road, and it's kind of suicide for Catelyn to take this path anyway. So the Lannister men, or people that are trying to get Tyrion back, whether that's to get favor with Tywin, whatever, are kind of the least of her concerns right now. But either way, they've been riding extremely hard on not great roads either. So again, Tyrion's horse is being butchered for food, and Tyrion notes that, again, this needs to be done quickly because, again, the smell is going to attract shadow cats. That's something that's going to actually come back to the end of the conclusion of this chapter, as we'll see how that actually plays out, and Tyrion is definitely right with that. And Bronn notes that none of us will go hungry tonight. And again, let's look at the issues that Catelyn faces. She has a bunch of men with her going to the Vale, with absolutely not enough food or supplies for such a journey. It's not a great plan. Again, and Catelyn's party isn't even more than 15 people, let alone, I think they're a party of like 10 or 12. And we talk about that Jon Arryn always took a large amount of men when he was, passing in the Vale because of the mountain clans, because of the shadow cats. Catelyn is endangering not only her life, but also Tyrion's, and they're not going to get any justice or anything like that if Tyrion doesn't even reach the Eyrie. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of this idea that I talk about with Catelyn, where she's a character that is inherently clever, but at the same time dumb. She is a really interesting character. She's the most human character to me of a lot of the people in the story. And this is one of those situations where Catelyn, I think, found herself in a situation where she captures Tyrion, but she's not stupid. She kind of realizes there's no way they're going to make it back to the north without Lannister men catching them. So how is she going to get any type of justice? She goes to the Vale. Again, I would say the odds are not in their favor to survive this journey. And it's a miracle that they even do. So again, I thought that was a little interesting point where you kind of see the emotion of, okay, capturing Tyrion, but also the logic also going, okay, this is not a great situation, and Catelyn tries to make the best situation out of a bad choice, in my opinion. I don't think she feels it's a bad choice yet, but as the readers, we know that this is a bad choice. Now, Tyrion describes Bronn as being black-haired, black eyes, a stubble, and being thin, and he kind of seems bony, but very hard. Like, he has very hard bones. He's not very, someone that's going to be broken easily. And Tyrion, again, is not pleased with this. This has been his horse for a long time. It was his horse. And because of this stupid journey that they're going on, he's losing things that are valuable to him. And again, it's also the idea that, going through unnecessary hardships. Tyrion is not someone that is, I guess, immune to going through hardships. His journey to the Wall was not a pleasant one. The Wall itself is not a pleasant place to stay at. So again, Tyrion is kind of used to these travels at this point of the Vale, where it's like it's not really that hospitable. But at this point, he still doesn't want to do it. Tyrion still is someone at nature that's a Lannister. He's lived in privilege majority of his life. And this is just not a journey that he wants to do, which I think makes a lot of sense. Bronn notes that meat is meat, and the Dothraki love horse more than beef or pork, which Tyrion notes he is not Dothraki. Again, eating horse is something that it's a very desperate thing if you're eating horses. I mean, we're going to see this come back when we look at Stannis' campaign in the North in Book 5. But for the most part, in Westeros, this isn't really a common thing. Whereas in Essos, they have a lot of different cultures and stuff like that. And you know, Bronn brings up the Dothraki, but it's just a different cultural difference there. But, you know, Bronn makes a good point here. It's like, if they can eat it, why can't we? And, you know, they value it more than we do. You know, it's not that outlandish is what Bronn is trying to say. Bronn kind of gives off the vibe that he is someone that has lived off of being someone who has lived on the road, who has gone nights without eating and things like that, that he values just food for being food. So I think that's something that George subtly does there that shows kind of how Bronn is this kind of gruffy sellsword. And again, Tyrion notes here, but kind of counteracting here, that just because another culture believes something, should we then believe it or, oh, go with what they do? Again, the Dothraki are a people that believe in strength. So someone, if they had been born like Tyrion and had been like a dwarf, they would have been thrown at the back of the line and basically would have been fed to the dogs. That's how Dothraki view deformed children or people that have conditions. Not a great thing. And again, it shows like why Tyrion being a Lannister was so important. Because in other circumstances, he probably wouldn't have lived to adulthood because nobody would have tried to take care of him. People would have actively wanted him to die. And Chicken then taunts Tyrion with a slab of meat, asking if he wants a taste. And I think this is an interesting point because we are going to actually see how desperate these people are. Chicken is someone that's willing to eat like raw horse meat, which is disgusting to think about, but it's something that's going to happen. It shows how desperate these people are to eat because they don't have all this food for this long journey through the East Road. I thought that was something that was interesting to note as well. Tyrion notes how Jaime had given that horse on his 23rd name day. Again, showing how Tyrion and Jaime have a close relationship. How Jaime did seem like he actively cared about Tyrion, whereas a lot of other people in his family do not. So that was a nice little point that George brings up at this point as well. And again, we see Chicken eat a piece of the raw meat, which is so unsanitary. It's so disgusting, in my opinion. It just shows you either how Chicken has lived as a person. Again, showing kind of the poverty difference here, where some people just in this world do not have the means to have proper food and have to resort to this. And even as we'll see, like, they're not going to cook this horse. They're just going to try to eat it, like, straight up. And again, Bronn seems like he's a little bit more, you know, would rather have it fried. And he says it'd be fried with onions would probably be the best way to cook it. And I could agree. If you're going to eat this horse, frying it and then at least giving it some seasoning or some taste to it would probably be better than what Chicken is doing. Tyrion notes how awful this road is with little food and cold night after cold night. Again, they're kind of up in like a mountainous, hilly area. There's not a lot of wildlife around the Vale, especially in the part they're at right now. And even if they were to go venturing and go hunting, it's about as likely as you're going to find a shadow cat that kills you as you're going to find, like, say, a deer or a rabbit or something that you could, you know, kill and then cook. So, again, this is not a journey you want to go unprepared for. And that's exactly what Catelyn has done. It's another reason as to why that they could be riding really hard is because they just don't have the food to survive this trip if they took, like, a leisure pace. And again, Tyrion notes that all this is bad, but he has no idea what's waiting for him at the end of this journey. He doesn't know what will happen when he meets Lysa, or if they even get to the Eyrie, what will be his fate. At this point, he then starts to recount kind of like where we cut off with Catelyn's last chapter, and kind of seeing it from Tyrion's POV. And he's kind of thinking about how he was captured in the damn Stark/Tullys. He notes how 1 second he was ordering dinner, and the next swords were being pulled upon him. His protector had pulled his sword, but there was no use, right? Tyrion told him to put it down. Again, what is, again, one or two guys that Tyrion had with him going to be able to do against a room full of people that were backing Catelyn? And Tyrion had even told Catelyn, you have the wrong man, and that on his honor, he had nothing to do with it. And again, we're going to throw this into this idea that what is honor? Because Catelyn's going to throw it back saying, that means nothing. The Lannisters have no honor, really, is what she's going to say. And as she showed the room her scars from the blade that tried to kill Bran. Now, Catelyn, again, like we talked about, is very smart in the way she gathers people to her cause. She, again, uses this idea that she was innocently attacked. She grows sympathy. She pulls on people's honor towards her family. And she does all of that perfectly. And paints Tyrion as this bad guy, using what the Lannister kind of reputation is, that they don't care about anything but gold and power and lying and thieving and stuff like that. And that's something that's very interesting, because when you look at the Lannisters, right, when you look at someone like Tywin, yeah, that makes a lot of sense as to why she would be noting on Lannister honor. But other characters like Jaime, like Tyrion, it's very mixed the way you look at their honor, right? Tyrion is this character that is someone that, you know, actively tried to help Bran, giving him designs for the saddle. He is someone that has given advice to Jon, helped him develop at the wall. Tyrion, in a lot of ways, especially earlier on in the story, shows a lot of qualities of being someone that's very honorable, even though he's willing to do things that aren't as honorable, right? Like the way he plays the Game of Thrones, but he does have that other side to him. And that's something that's interesting that Catelyn can't really see in Tyrion. Because, again, Catelyn is basing off of his physical appearance and what people have said about him from afar, not actually Catelyn knowing who Tyrion is as a person and judging him that way. And that's something that, as Catelyn and Tyrion, you know, are next to each other and talk more and, you know, really have a dialogue, she kind of starts to understand him a bit more. And I think she questions herself on who Tyrion is and if he would have tried to kill Bran. But quickly, the room, which had been pleased for the Lannister gold, and again, because he's a High Lord, so people are going to try to get favor from him, they had now flipped on him. Many began calling for him to be killed. And Tyrion really only sees one route here, and he's completely right. He can't turn all these people against him. Catelyn has already done that. She's already played her card. Tyrion doesn't have the Uno reverse card in this situation, so he kind of just has to go along with it. And he basically says he will go with Catelyn to answer for any crimes that allegedly he has done. And again, cutting their way out is impossible. Tyrion really couldn't convince these people. Tyrion does try one last little card before they leave. And it's not going to work because Catelyn once again will outsmart him. And that gets us into page 326. So, moving on, Tyrion even notes that he only had two men, and one of them was more of a servant. He was someone that was used for cooking, setting up tents, you know, setting up, just basically being someone that could do all of the work for Tyrion. Again, Tyrion is someone that doesn't have the best physical capabilities. You kind of need someone around to be able to do that. And then the other companion, again, was more of like the soldier, like protector type. But it is interesting that Tyrion only gets two men, and only one of them is kind of competent with a sword. You can look at this at a lot of ways, because I'm not sure if it's like Tyrion's decision on how many people he took with him, or if it was like a Tywin, like how many people he allowed him to take, type deal. But you can look at it as the Lannisters being in this position, that they're basically untouchable. Like, who would dare attack Tyrion? Like, you'd have to be really powerful, because you know Tywin's going to come down on you and kill you if you mess with the Lannisters. That's what happens here with Catelyn. Tywin invades the Riverlands because of this event that we see here. A war basically breaks out because of Tyrion getting caught. And his other companion as well was Yoren. And Yoren would not stick up for him. The Night's Watch, they don't take part in all of these events and these politics. And also, you could also make that there's more of a loyalty from Yoren with maybe more of the Stark faction, because again, the Starks, the Night's Watch, have a closer relationship than someone like Tyrion. Even though Tyrion and Yoren have been together for a while, they probably have developed some sort of relationship. Roderick had then called for them to be unarmed, and so they were. The innkeep had begged for Tyrion not to be killed here, which makes a lot of sense. Why would she be thinking this? Because she understands that if Tyrion was killed here, she would probably be killed. Her business would be burned to the ground. And not because, again, that she did anything wrong, because it happened in her vicinity. She has heard the rumors of the reigns of Castamere. This chapter does a lot of good work for not just House Lannister, but also for Tywin. There's a lot of things that were it's not directly saying Tywin here, but it's implicating what Tywin would do. And we know that this is true. And this is something that, again, points to the idea that the common people and more of the, people that aren't nobles, what they have to deal with because of the High Lords, because of the things that they weren't even really involved in, they will face negative consequences because of them. And Tyrion kind of pipes up again. He doesn't want to die at all. So again, makes sense. So moving on. Catelyn then notes to everyone, very loudly, that she is taking him to Winterfell, again to throw anyone off of their trail. And this is a smart maneuver. If you're going to capture Tyrion, even though it's a stupid decision, do it in a way that's going to buy you time to get people off of you. Because once again, it'll basically put all of these guys that are trying to get Tyrion back, that will try to get all of this, claim something from Tywin from getting Tyrion back, they'll all be heading to, like, the Twins, to, like, the Trident area. They'll be looking for Catelyn on the road with Tyrion, or anywhere in that area, and they'll be searching for days. That's going to buy Catelyn a lot of time. And Catelyn can then, go to the Eyrie. Maybe she could have made it to Riverrun. And I think the reason Catelyn doesn't do that is because basically Riverrun would probably be attacked and sieged, and it's not as good defensively as, say, the Eyrie. The Eyrie is just, you can't really get into it. And it's also farther away from the Lannisters as well. So again, I think there is a lot of reasons she goes to the Eyrie. Outside of just taking Tyrion there, she also probably wants to answer some questions from Lysa, as she's been absent in Ned's investigation. She just doesn't look at it logically. How do I get there with less than like 15 people? It just doesn't make any sense. And Tyrion is not displeased by hearing this, right? Because he knows that they're probably going to get caught. And a lot of things could happen when they were going to Winterfell. Tyrion knows that. But that's not truly what happens. But Tyrion does admit that Cat was clever. But he also notes that not everyone came to her call. Tyrion notes that yes, 2 Freymen had stood up, but just as quickly the commander had told them to sit down. What does this tell us about them? It tells us a lot of foreshadowing to the character of the Freys. They are someone where maybe you'll have a couple people that are loyal to the Catelyn or the Tully cause and the Stark cause, like we're going to see with Robb. There are a couple of Freys that are really on Robb's camp. That's the reason they're not at the Red Wedding, which is kind of some of the subtle foreshadowing in those chapters. But we see that the Freys tend to not get involved. They stay on the outside. They see what events can benefit them. This also shows them that they may have more loyalty to someone like Tywin, who would give them more power. So again, a really nice little nod there to what we kind of see with things that happen later on with the Freys. That gets us into page 327. Tyrion notes that any man will be rewarded if they tell Tywin what has happened here. And again, Tyrion's basically throwing this up in the air just to have more people knowing what happened here, more people telling Tywin what's going on, telling people that can come find and rescue Tyrion. Now, Tyrion knows that this is kind of a lie, right? Tywin's not going to reward people for telling him information. He's just going to be like, oh, thanks. Right? That's all you got to offer? All right, get out. He'll just be pissed. But it's still a good move, and particularly as he is trying to sway the sellswords. This is another point I want to bring up here, is that Tyrion is trying to flex what people can gain from supporting the Lannisters over the Tullys. That's something he's going to use with Bronn, and why Bronn will fight for him later on. Roderick then, with a worried face, tells them the Lannister guards will come with them, and also they'd be thankful if the people stayed quiet. Which, again, Roderick knows this probably isn't going to happen. It's just kind of like a shot in the dark. People talk. If this is going to get out, there's no way in hell that it's not. And Tyrion thinks he's a fool and that the message will fly quickly, and even notes that what will the Freys do? Well, there's a cautious man, and upon hearing what happened, what will he do? They will have to pass through that area. Walder could be pivotal in stopping them. And this is very true. Remember, they're going to be going straight towards the twins and or the Trident area. So, again, what would the Freys do here? There's a chance if you're the Freys, you're sitting here going, okay, we could return Tyrion back to the Lannisters, gain a bunch of favor with them. Also, subtly just do a little jab at the Tullys as well. Hoster Tully is sick. He's not in the position to do anything to us. Tyrion has a good opinion there. So I think that's a very interesting point that could have been made there. What if Walder just takes both of them captive and kind of waits things out, sees how the tide is turning? Cat then wasted no time saying they need horses and fresh provisions and that any man that helped them will be rewarded, and that was enough to bring them to her. Tyrion was still not afraid. He knew that the riders would be on them in a day, or one of the river lords would catch them to curry favor with Tywin. He felt fine until a hood was pulled over his head, and the galloping went hard. He was cramped everywhere. And this is another little interesting point, as some of the politics we'll see Robb have to face, is that Robb doesn't really want to leave Jaime with any of his bannermen, because he doesn't want the even opportunity for Tywin to try and sway them to switch sides, the amount of gold he could give them. Again, Jaime is the golden boy. Tywin would do a lot to get him back. So the reason Robb, again, keeps Jaime with him for a long time and then eventually gives him to Riverrun is because he trusts them, but he doesn't really trust what Tywin could do to possibly dissuade them. And that is something that is kind of foreshadowed here as well. And that gets us into page 328. So moving into page 328, this continued for a while. Again, the rain and clouded any ability to hear what was going on, and the blindness made it to where he nearly fell off of his horse. Again, I think it's very interesting to even think about being blinded while on a horse. It's hard and I think difficult for a lot of people just to walk straight when blinded. So think about the idea of trying to sit a horse, having no idea what's being said around you or what's going on. And also, you also have the physical limitations that Tyrion has. This sounds truly horrific. And at all this time as well, you're taking very few stops, and you're also going at a very fast pace because you're trying to get away from this area that people would be able to hunt you down. Eventually, they were called to dismount, and Tyrion's hood was removed, and he notices with a shock that it was the east roads because of the stony hills. And I can't even imagine Tyrion kind of getting out of this. He finally realizes where they are, and the absolute horror of that. This is the worst possible place, in my opinion, he could be, outside of possibly like the north and Dorne. Because the Lannisters will have the toughest time getting Tyrion back if he A, makes it to the Eyrie, B, even continues on this road because there's a likely chance he's going to die, and 2, anyone that's going to be pursuing him will be kind of a slow pursuit as well. This is not looking good for Tyrion in a lot of ways. Tyrion notes that she said she was taking him to Winterfell, and Catelyn replies yes, often and loudly, and the riders would be riding for days. Tyrion is disgusted with himself. He was gifted with being cunning, and Cat had outsmarted him twice now. And this is what I mean when Catelyn, I say that she is someone that is smart but also dumb. Because in a lot of ways, she outsmarts Tyrion a couple times. And Tyrion's a very smart individual, but she's also very dumb because she is someone that doesn't see through Littlefinger. She is someone that captures Tyrion and makes Ned's job 1,000 times harder, completely going against what Ned told her to do. And it's that part of the dumb side that her emotion kicks in that helps make those bad decisions. But again, we also see that Catelyn, again, she was trying to get other people that were maybe going to come after them to go a different way so that they would be preoccupied. It's a very smart plan. And again, Catelyn is very smart for that part of her plan. The journey continued, though, and they only stopped to feed the horses. Again, it just shows what kind of a pace they were going on, the kind of desperation I feel like Catelyn is feeling at this point. And it's just not looking great for our party at this moment. Tyrion then notes after the second night of their travels, no one even bothered to guard him or bind him. There was no escape from the high pass of the Vale. It was treacherous. It was a little stone road, and even if he did run, he would not make it far. Either the mountain clans who swore no allegiance to anyone, or shadow cats would get him. Tyrion knew that the road they were on would lead to Lysa. Tyrion knew her for a bit of time because she was at court with Jon Arryn, was not excited to meet her again. And I don't think anyone is excited to meet Lysa at this point. She is someone that is pretty unstable and not very pleasant as well. And I just look at this from this idea that think about how awful these conditions must be if nobody even cares to guard Tyrion. That shows you a lot about kind of the geography of the High Pass. And it also shows there's just, I don't understand why Catelyn's going at such a fast pace. They're losing horses by the day, it almost feels like. And for what reason? They're not going to be pursued. No one is going to be pursuing them for a long time. Even if they do, they're going to have to go at a slow pace or risking losing their horse, like we've seen with Catelyn's party. So again, I think there's a lot of interesting things to look at with this little part here, but let's continue on. Tyrion notes that how everyone looks miserable, and even Marillion, the singer who had come with them, his harp looks terrible as well. Spirits are really low. And this is where I think you look at all of these people that followed Catelyn, whether that was for gold or rewards, or it was for honor or whatever. This is the point now when you start to question Catelyn's leadership. You know, you're low on food. Your horses are dying. You're in the Vale, which none of these people thought that's where they were going. They thought they were going to Winterfell. This is where Tyrion could really try to turn people against Catelyn. It's what he does. Right after the battle that we're going to see in this chapter, he very much has gained a lot of power over people in the party, and he himself has gained a lot of power, as we'll see as we go on later on. And the Went men, or the man that's of House Went, then tells Cat, we need a rest or we'll lose another horse, as this is the third horse they have lost. Cat wants to hear none of it, and the Lannisters could catch them, to which I agree with Tyrion. Like, that's very doubtful. Tyrion isn't really lying here. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that they are not going to be assailed, or anyone would even bother coming on the East Road for probably at least 4 to 5 days of looking. And then you also look at, okay, how many days advance does Catelyn's party have? The odds of them being caught before reaching the Eyrie is extremely low. So again, I agree here, and Catelyn again is just being dumb, in my opinion. She's going to get their party killed even easier than, like, say, the Mountain Clans coming over or the Shadowcats. A Bracken man then tells Tyrion to shut it, as his views in the matter were not asked for. Again, the Brackens being pleasant as always. And Tyrion then hastily learned all of their names for a later point of revenge or reward, depending on what happened. Now, this is very interesting, because we see this list of names, something we'll see with Arya. It's kind of something we're going to see with, like, Cersei as well. Again, we see the idea of vengeance, and just Tyrion keeping tabs on these people that eventually he may want to kill them, maybe threaten them, not give them a good time. Or, if they switch to his side, reward them as well, which is something he will do. So that gets us into page 330. Cat then allows for Tyrion to speak, and Tyrion notes how it is unlikely there will be any pursuit. All riders will be riding up the Trident looking for them, and that even if Tywin sends men for him, which he says is not guaranteed, Tywin does not love him, which again, we know is a lie. Tywin is going to send people after Tyrion, but not because of Tyrion. Tywin cares about the reputation. You can't just steal a member of House Lannister, even if it is one of the lesser Lannisters in Tywin's, like, head. You can't do that. You can't get away with that, right? Tywin has a reputation to hold up, because if he starts allowing people in his mind to do stuff like this, well, the Lannister reputation doesn't mean as much. And that's the big part of this that Tyrion understands, but he's not really telling Catelyn. Tyrion also states that the path is treacherous. No pursuit will happen until they reach the Eyrie, which I completely agree with. If they continue at this pace, they may never make it, because they keep losing mounts, and if Tyrion dies, what's the point? And that is a great point as well, is that the whole point here is to get Tyrion to the Eyrie alive, because Catelyn wants to use Tyrion as evidence on the Lannisters. She wants to use Tyrion as that person for Ned to tell the king, hey, the Lannisters are fucking you over. They tried to kill Bran. They're doing all sorts of stuff. Cat tries to deny this, saying, what if his death is the point? Which, again, is a very stupid argument. Tyrion knows this is an obvious lie. If she wanted to kill him, she could have. People were egging her on to kill him back at the inn, and she didn't. Why take this big, long journey to the Eyrie if that was the point? And Tyrion then continues, he does not kill men in their bed. Cat won't hear it, saying it was your dagger the catspaw is armed with, and Tyrion has the perfect response. What idiot arms a common footpad with their own blade? And we're going to find out later that the blade was actually Robert's, and I think this kind of ties in nicely. What person would do that? What idiot? What person does Tyrion constantly call an idiot? Joffrey. So I think that's a really interesting point, you know, if you believe that theory, to kind of look back on in this moment. At this, we see doubt in Kat's eyes, but she only says, but why would Peter lie to me? It's kind of like she's not really talking to Tyrion. It seems like in her mind, it's for the first time she's having some doubt. Why would he lie to me? And this is what I think is so interesting, is we see Catelyn make good decisions or good logical maneuvers, right, against Tyrion, but her emotion and her trusting nature of some people that should not be trusted is what gets her into trouble. And the fact that she is shocked to think that maybe Peter lied to her is something that is just amazing to think about when we get further in the story and we look at what Littlefinger's actions are. Man, Catelyn misread this situation really badly. And Tyrion's going to offer, I think, one of the best lines of the first book, or the story in general. But Tyrion utters, why does a bear shit in the woods? Because it is his nature. Again, referring to Littlefinger lies because that is who he is. And Tyrion even continues, Catelyn of all people should know that, should know this, which in a lot of ways I agree with. Catelyn grew up with Littlefinger. Catelyn knows who Littlefinger should be as a person. The way, again, the High Lords mistreated him. And she should know that. And again, I think we go back to this idea that people want to believe what they want to believe. Littlefinger gave Catelyn the perfect story. Tyrion is this person that has a terrible reputation. He's this evil monkey man. And she didn't look into the logic of the lie. You know, we've talked about this in Ned chapters in the past, where we know Tyrion would not back someone else going against his brother. We know that. That's common knowledge at court. That's not like something that's like unheard of. And Catelyn doesn't really look into the lie Littlefinger tells her. Again, it's that idea of logic and emotion. Catelyn then asks what he means, and Tyrion knows that Littlefinger has told half the court how he took your maidenhead. Now, this is an interesting point. Does Littlefinger actually believe that he slept with Catelyn, or is this a lie that he just tells? In a lot of ways, I kind of believe that Littlefinger thinks he slept with Catelyn. It would really fuel and make me understand a lot more Littlefinger's obsession with Catelyn. So I think in Littlefinger's head, that actually isn't a lie. But I think a lot of the court knows that that probably didn't happen. And this gets a raise out of the party, as Catelyn says that is a lie, and one of the companions offers to take his tongue, again foreshadowing to Tyrion's tongue, getting him in trouble. Again, another common theme for Tyrion. Catelyn then says that Peter's love for her was innocent and pure and nothing more. And then she calls him an evil man. Again, playing into this idea that she already kind of has this preconceived image of who Tyrion is. Think about it in your own life. You know, if you have someone that you've heard rumors about, or you've just in your head preconceived that they are someone you're not going to like. And then maybe as time goes on, you realize this person isn't what you conceived that they were, and you start to say like them, right? I think that happens a lot, especially when you're younger, when you don't understand maybe people that are different from you as well. And I think that's kind of what's kind of happening here a bit, is that Catelyn's basing all of her information and her theories on who she believes Tyrion is. Also, the idea here that she believes that it was an innocent and pure love and nothing more is kind of wild to me. Seeing as though Littlefinger quite literally impregnated Lysa, which I think is interesting. I don't know if Catelyn ever knew about that. But I don't know. Also, we note that during this point, Catelyn gives Tyrion a cold stare that Tyrion notes he had never seen before. It really gives off those Stoneheart vibes that we're going to see later on in the story. Tyrion then continues to press the issue, saying he only cares about her physical features and that Littlefinger only has loved Littlefinger. Which, I don't know if I believe this to be true, that Littlefinger has only cared about Littlefinger. I do think he did, like, have a weird obsession with Catelyn. But as of right now, I do think, like, he cares about Littlefinger, not really about what benefits her, it's what benefits him. Tyrion is then held with a dagger at his throat, but Tyrion says, if you kill me, the truth dies with me. And again, that's an important point here, is that Catelyn wants the truth, and I think a lot of what Tyrion has just said has put a bit of doubt into Catelyn's mind. Because the same way we can talk about something like a person you dislike, that you had a preconception of, there can be somebody that you maybe thought was your friend, or thought that, you know, you had a good relationship with, and you start to find things out about them, that maybe they're talking behind your back. Maybe they've done things in their past that you just cannot agree with morally. That's something that Catelyn could be kind of going through in her own head during this moment. Tyrion then asks how he came by this dagger, and Catelyn responds saying, well, Tyrion, you won the dagger during Joffrey's name day. And Tyrion's like putting all the pieces together now. He's figuring out what the lie was. Tyrion says that, oh, I must have won it when Loras unhorsed Jaime. That was the story, right? To which once again we see that Catelyn confirms this, but is very unsure of this story at the moment. But before we can dive deeper into this issue, we hear riders arriving and screaming as the battle will commence. Moving into page 332, Tyrion then tells Catelyn to arm them, to which he reads on her face she knows he is right, but she is hesitant. The Watcher informs him there are maybe 20 or 25 of them coming. Again, showing that the Mountain Clans actually have more numbers than our party does, which when we see that the Mountain Clans lose this battle, it's interesting to think about why did they do that. Was it because of skill, or was it because of weaponry and things like that? Everyone is preparing for the upcoming skirmish. We see Marillion panicking as he does not listen to commands and is extremely pale. Tyrion once again pleads for them to be armed. It is the difference between life and death. Catelyn makes him pledge he will not take up arms after, and Tyrion agrees on his honor as a Lannister. Catelyn allows them to be armed. Now, this makes a lot of sense. Again, the fact that the Lannister people were not armed at this point is kind of interesting because, again, what are they going to do? There's way more of Catelyn's people here. They weren't going to break their way out of it. But the idea here that Tyrion wants to be armed and his men, again, it's not just Tyrion being armed here. This is something that's different in the show. In the show, we don't really have this focus on the two companions of Tyrion that went with him. In the books, he's arguing for not only him, but also his two men to also be armed. Because, again, one of them is a soldier. He's been trained in Tywin's army. He's a pretty good soldier. The other one, not so much, but still, every guy will help in this fight against the Mountain Clans. And that gets us into page 333. Roderick tosses Jake a sword, and Morek was content with a bow. Jake is, again, the one that's more good with the sword, and Morek was more of kind of like the servant type. And Bronn hands Tyrion an axe, something he had never used. And Bronn's advice is think of it like splitting logs. Tyrion doesn't really like this reference because, again, logs don't really bleed and all things like that. And also logs don't swing back. But Tyrion then goes to find cover with Marillion, and the boy frantically wants him to go away and wants no part of the fighting. Tyrion mocks him, saying he has lost his sense of adventure and pushes him aside. Now, something I want to point out here is, what does Tyrion do as soon as he gets a weapon? Tyrion is not someone that goes to the front of the lines to start fighting. He's someone that strategically stays on the outside of the battle and not in the thick of it, because that's where Tyrion would be able to succeed in a situation like this. He's a smaller target. Maybe the clansmen would overlook him, and that's where he could make his mark, which is kind of exactly what he does. But we'll also see when it looks at like morality and how Tyrion views things like honor and things like that. Like, he is someone that's going to scold Jake for going straight into the fighting. And that's something that I think is interesting to look at with Tyrion's morals. The riders are now on them. Morik and one of the other men shoot their bows, and the men of the mountains are seen coming. We can tell how poor they are, with mismatched pieces of armor and weapons of low quality. At the lead of the group is a huge man with a two-handed greatsword. Roderick yells Winterfell, and Chiggin and Bronn shout other wordless stuff as the riders clash. Chiggin cuts a man down, and Bronn began cutting foes down right and left. But again, I want to point out the state of the mountain clans. They are in mismatched armor, assuming this is probably armor that they stole from people. They have weapons that aren't great. They have things like scythes, like farming utensils. Isn't a well-armed raiding party, which is kind of one of the reasons that our party is able to fight them back. And something else that we'll see later on, why Tyrion's able to kind of manipulate a lot of these people onto his side, is because of the state of them. They are kind of a shabby group. They outnumber this group that Tyrion is with 2-1 almost, and they get slaughtered in this attempt. That all gets into page 334. So moving on, Roderick was taking on the big man, and Jake was getting on a horse after shooting arrows to head to the fray. At this moment, a horse vaulted over Tyrion and Marillion. The horse was turning around, and Tyrion buried his axe in the horse's throat. Tyrion nearly lost his grip on it. Again, Tyrion is not someone that has big arms. He's not someone that has a lot of grip strength. Putting that into a horse and the horse kind of moving, you would almost think Tyrion would get pulled along with it. But he is able to keep his grip on it. Horse and rider fell upon Marillion and the man, before he could get up, Tyrion buried his axe in the neck, finishing him off. Tyrion tells Marillion to stay put and to pretend he is dead. The battle was like a blur to Tyrion, with screams going on. He notes that Bronn was now unhorsed and fighting with 2 swords. Tyrion remained on the outskirts of the battle and found a mountain clanman near death and took his helm, and was pleased with that, at least this little protection. Jake was then suddenly killed from behind as he was dealing with a man in the front. All the while, Tyrion was stealthily taking out legs of horses and trying to help as much as possible. Now, something I want to talk about here is how this is not a war, right? This is just a little mini skirmish. This is what happens in war. War is not an honorable place. People get killed in the back. There's looting of dead people or people that are dying just so you can get more. And think about it not only from like Tyrion's perspective, but think about it from a common person's perspective, like we're going to see with Bronn and other characters, is that what is war? You can benefit. How are you going to benefit from fighting this? You're trying to basically kill other people. And we're going to see something when you look at something like Robert's Rebellion. This is something I would see way more in that situation than a situation like this, where you're looting other people just to get better shoes, to get a better hat, to get better gloves, to get a better sword, chainmail. It shows how dishonorable war can be. And again, it's this thing that Tywin brings up, is that, is it better to kill a dozen men at dinner or thousands during battle? War inherently is not honorable. You just can't prevent that from happening. Looting and things like this is a common thing we see in war. And that's what George was really trying to show in this little mini skirmish as well as kind of just showing how Tyrion is going to fight later on, and also things like how skilled Bronn is as well. But we see, again, Tyrion's just kind of staying on the outskirts, kind of being this person that's not being seen probably. Again, when you're in the middle of battle, you're kind of looking for more of the people that are the bigger threats. So like Tyrion notes that this big guy with this great sword is the kind of the person that he recognizes first. You're not going to recognize Tyrion if you're a mountain clansman at the beginning of this battle, because you're taking him as, okay, let's kill all the big threats like Jake, for instance, and then we'll kill Tyrion later. But that gets us into page 335. He then comes across the body of another of their companions, the pig-faced one that had him at dagger point earlier in the chapter, and Tyrion steals his knife off the corpse. At this moment, he hears Catelyn screaming. Catelyn is pinned against a stone face with 3 men in front of her. Tyrion at first thinks, good, let them have her. But it seems like his body is reacting and not his mind. He is moving to help her. Without thinking, he is on them, and he cuts the first man at the knee and dodges the second man until Cat puts the knife she had been holding through his throat. Third man on the horse then decides to flee the scene. Again, Tyrion is someone that is not inherently evil or a bad person at this point. He has a sense of morality that at times drives him even when his brain is telling him not to. Right? He wants to be spiteful of Catelyn for capturing him. He wants to be someone that doesn't help her. But he can't really bring that side of him just has not been awoken yet. He hasn't been betrayed enough. He hasn't been put in this very low place yet. He still has those things that, and Dance, right? When we catch up with him in Dance, he doesn't have those things really anymore. He's someone that's a completely broken person. Tyrion then takes a moment to look around the battlefield. The fight is over. Horses lay dying, and men are moaning, screaming, and dying on the ground. The mountain clans seem to have all vanished or died. Tyrion thinks they must have been fighting for half the day, but it seems the sun has barely moved. Again, it's something that we see constantly with warfare, and the way it's described in this series specifically is that combat can seem like it takes forever, the adrenaline that's been going on, but in reality it was a couple of moments, maybe 15 minutes. It wasn't anything terribly long. We also see kind of the horrors of war. Men are screaming and dying. There's horses dead everywhere. People are injured. It's not a pretty picture to think about, and the way George describes this scene is not pretty either. And it will not be the last time he describes something like this. Bronn notes that this was his first battle, being Tyrion's first battle, not Bronn's, while at the same time pulling off of Jike's boots, who were very finely made, as he was one of Tywin's soldiers. Again, Tyrion doesn't really have a problem with this. Jike, it was someone that served Tyrion pretty well, and Bronn is not only looting the people that he killed and the people that were slain, but people that were also companions of theirs. Again, shows that gray area of warfare, where why would we leave Jike, who has all of this great, equipment that could help someone like Bronn in the future, but also looting the dead, not a great look either. So it's that great gray area of war that we understand why Bronn is doing it, even though it might not be the most honorable thing. Tyrion then notes how Tywin will be so proud, but up until this point, Tyrion had not noted how cramped and sore his legs were, and that he could hardly stand. Bronn tells him he needs a woman now, which Chiggin agrees. Again, it's kind of this idea here that the adrenaline's worn off, right? Tyrion's been so busy fighting, he's been so busy doing this or that, that he hasn't noticed how his body is reacting to this pain. And again, Tyrion is someone that does not have good physical qualities, so he's going to feel it more than anyone else would. The best way I could possibly kind of think about this is if you're someone that works out or you're running, I feel like you can be in such a zone where you're not thinking about how much your body's aching or how tired you are until after. You're on the drive home if you're coming from a gym, or for me, I work out in like my basement. I have workout stuff. Coming back up or just sitting down and drink your water after, you really feel that. And that's kind of what Tyrion is kind of implying here, is that you didn't really even have time to think about it, of how he was feeling, so that the adrenaline has worn off. That gets us into page 336. Tyrion then looks over at Catelyn and says, "I'm willing if she is." Which again, great line. And also it's him building a relationship with these sellswords, because they laugh at this and they're kind of respecting Tyrion more as he was involved in the battle. And again, he's someone that offers them more if he survives this. And again, it's also just the idea that Tyrion's kind of twisting them against Catelyn into his side. Tyrion then washes hands and face off of the blood of the fight and examines the dead, 3 being their men, and 9 of the Mountain Clan. And again, Tyrion kind of realizes how heavily underarmed they really were. Like, he kind of noted this, like, when they were attacking, but they had farming weapons, cheap steel, it's like scythes, like I mentioned earlier. He also notes that the big man he saw earlier was not so big now without his cloak. Again, because someone takes his cloak. Playing on the idea that, again, everyone also looks smaller on the ground dead, you know, and I think that's an interesting point here that's kind of made. But again, showing that the Mountain Clans doubled Tyrion's party and they only killed 3 of them. Shows kind of how not great they are at this point. He also notes how Jake died a fool running headfirst into battle, where, again, it seems a lot of people would see this as very noble, very honorable. Tyrion sees it as stupid. Sir Willis then presses Catelyn, though he must leave now. We have driven them off, but they will come back sooner rather than later. Cat wants them to be buried, but they were noble men who died for them. And there is no time for this. The ground is too hard and rocky. We again also see how the sellswords are not loyal to Cat, as they will say they will continue. Regardless, they would rather not die, which again makes sense. Roderick, who had taken 2 injuries, agrees, and Catelyn, while angry, finally agrees to continue. Again, there's nothing they can really do for these people. The best that they could possibly do is maybe try to get some wood together real quick and start a fire, but none of them really have the capabilities to do that at this point. There's nothing they can really do. And it kind of reinforces the idea of taking their equipment. Like, it's going to be of no use. These people are dead. And that's an interesting point. And as we get into page 337, we're going to kind of see a dark payoff to the beginning of the chapter, and also this idea of leaving them behind. Page 337 then starts with Tyrion taking Jake's horse instead, and is about to settle up when one of the companions asks for the dirk back, to which Catelyn allows him to keep, and his axe as well. Tyrion thanks her, but Catelyn says she trusts him no more now than she did before, which I kind of disagree with. I think Catelyn subconsciously realizes, okay, this guy saved my life. If it wasn't for him, things probably would not have gone as well, especially with having, again, the Lannister guy, Jake, who also did help them as well. I think it's Catelyn saving face here, but I do think she is starting to kind of doubt some of the things she's been told about Tyrion. Tyrion notes that he's made a tremendous improvement since the start of this journey. He starts bound and blind, and now he had armor, again, because he takes the helmet off of the Mountain Clan guy. He had a weapon, and there was just some loyalty among the camp that Tyrion could use. Tyrion also notes how Marillion had broken fingers and ribs, but all of a sudden has a new cloak. Once again showing what war does and how people will try to benefit off others. Marillion was not part of this battle, but yet he still takes this cloak. Again, showing some of maybe the cowardice of someone like Marillion, but also what war does. Tyrion notes that not a mile out, they heard the shadow cats eating the companions they left behind. Again, a very dreary thought, and really showing how awful these roads are. The chapter ends with Tyrion riding up alongside Cat and continuing their conversation from earlier. And as he states, regardless what you think of me, I never bet against family. And that ends the chapter. So thank you guys all for watching this one. This is a long one, about an hour. And I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.